Hi, this is magician Joshua J. from the United States, and you're listening to my interview with Elaine Goodman on gogoodman.com.au. Check it out.
I found out about you on Penn And Teller Full Us on Netflix, and you spoke about your dad showing you a trick when you were 8 years old. Can you pinpoint a certain moment when your appreciation of magic changed from viewing it as magic to viewing it, I guess, as an art form that takes years to perfect?
Wow, that's your first question. That's an amazing question.
That's my opener.
Wow, this is going to be a fun interview. Yeah, I think so. I think my dad showed me this trick, which happened to be out of this world, by the way. Totally fooled me, and then what was instrumental for me was going down in my room in the basement and taking about 8 decks of cards and tearing them up and throwing them and making charts and figuring out how the trick worked. And when I came upstairs and did it back to him, he was like, wow, you figured that out. Like, we're onto something here. So it was being amazed by it, thinking through it, problem solving, and then figuring it out that kind of led me to being a magician. But in the beginning, it was just us going to a magic shop, seeing these tricks, and it wasn't, like you say, it was not anything more than just visual escapism. But there's this convention that was about 2 hours from us called the Magi Fest, which is this huge conference. And we went down when I was, I think, 8 years old, and my mind was just blown. And it changed the trajectory of my life. I met Jeff McBride there. I met David Harkey, David Williamson, a lot of important magicians in my life. And then to bring it full circle, I ended up with my partner Andy Gladwin taking over that convention, some years later and running it.
Well, what was that moment? So that was the moment when you figured out that there's a convention, and that's when you figured out that it is an art form.
Well, it's just, like all conventions, if you go back to the beginner's mind, you get to see 25 acts in a matter of 24 hours. You get to see a show with 10 world-class magicians, and I had never seen anybody do magic on any level, anything like that. And then in one weekend I realized that my ceiling was very low.
What was your original aim when magic became your career? I mean, you've written books. You've written more than a handful of books. You've consulted on magic kits for kids. You've performed and fooled Penn And Teller. You were voted the 2012 Magician of the Year by the Society of American Magicians. You're a lecturer on magic. You've performed all over the world, and you've also got a world record. And there's plenty more accolades that we can mention later on. What did you originally have in mind?
Well, I'm very lucky and very selfish because I knew I wanted to do it and I didn't want to do anything else. And in some respects, I think I'm being fair to myself when I say it's not really about the money, it's not about fame, it's not about any of those things. It's about how much I love magic. But in another way, we all love magic, right? Everybody who dabbles loves magic. And so the big question when you're 18, 20, 21, 22 is, can I make a living at this? It's very practical, right? Because we all worry that we're going to love it, we're going to work hard at it, but that, we're not going to make rent, we're not going to be able to do it. So I was very lucky because it became pretty evident early on that I was going to be able to pull it off and not have to, do anything to supplement my magic.
So were you a generally coordinated kid?
I was pretty laser focused. I mean, I was not very sociable and I didn't have a lot of other hobbies. I did love sports, but I wasn't great at sports. Magic was the thing I was good at,
You specialise in sleight of hand, which in my head involves very good hand-eye coordination and a bit of mind manipulation as well, and it's all done close up. Yeah. Why this style? I mean, guys like David Copperfield and Penn And Teller and David Blaine probably have huge crates with boxes and cages and rope and chains and knives, etc. All you need is a few packs of cards, a few coins, and maybe a fire hydrant after you've made someone's mind explode. Why do you like this format?
It's always it's always intrigued me because it's so personal, right? I mean, there is no such thing as close-up magic that isn't engaging. It's happening right in front of you. It's with your stuff. So, I can remember sitting at the back of auditoriums and just seeing a magician and thinking, okay, that's nice, but that does very little for me. I want to see it up close. I want to see magic that means something to me.
Which brings me to the thing that really inspired me to contact you, and I've told you about this when I've emailed you to first contact you. I'm vision impaired, and I have a lot of friends who are more so than me, and even fully blind as well. I think in 2015 you were on Penn And Teller, correct? When you went on Penn And Teller for us, and you actually fooled them. You performed a trick you created for a blind 7-year-old girl.
Out of sight.
Can you firstly describe the trick and also take me through the process of creating a trick for a group or community that isn't really considered when it comes to magic?
Yeah, sure. So, essentially, it came from 2 points. The technical point, the less interesting one, is I saw somebody do a trick that totally blew me away. And it was, I would say, a very, very good trick, but it wasn't a great trick. It was a trick that was exactly... a deck is shown blank, but it was just all blank. And they somehow knew the card that was thought of. So I started doing this trick, and then I realized everybody who saw it was like, oh, but I thought you were going to get the card that I thought of and make the other cards go blank. In other words, if you think of the Three of Clubs, the Three of Clubs is there, but the others are blank. So I had to invent a way to do it, and I eventually did. But the other side of it is I live in New York, right across the street from the biggest blind center in the city. And so I am constantly meeting people who are visually impaired to varying degrees. And it always made me sad that, like, those people are the people I couldn't share my magic with. So I wanted to design a trick that they could see too. And that's what I did. And it ended up going over better or as well for people who could see as those who couldn't see well. And so that became kind of one of my signature pieces.
If you tried, do you think you could put a show together for a blind? I guess you can or can't put deaf into the same category because at least they can see. So do you think you could put a show together for a blind audience? Is that something that you'd like to do one day?
I absolutely would, and I've thought about it. I've in a new show I'm working on, I want to give people that sensation and hand out blindfolds and see if I can fool them without the use of sight. Because there's so many other senses that are not challenged in our lives. Everything is visual. So, yes, it's something I do want to work on. And there is a guy who does a show for the blind, and then if you're not blind, you do it in darkness. And it's pretty interesting conceptually.
Has this guy been to Australia? I mean, have you worked with this guy before?
No, I haven't. I believe he's from Argentina or Spain, and he does a 40-minute program. It's more of the self-working magic variety. It's a very good show. But, what I would like to do is really move people with it and have it be things changing in their hands that they can feel. So it's on a list to work on, like so many things.
You're still pretty young, Now, another topic that really interests me, and I wanted to cover this with you as well, because you said in your intro on Penn And Teller, you talk about everything in your life being fodder for magic. Since you're 8 years old, everything you've seen, everything you've talked to somebody about, everything can be turned into a trick. I'm really passionate about comedy, so watching it, studying different styles, reading about comedians. I haven't performed yet, but some of the best comedians have the mentality that everything can become a joke. In turn, this can lead them into a deep, dark hole where they're overanalyzing everything and they lose track of reality or fall into various mental illnesses or addictions. Have you ever struggled differentiating between magic and real life?
To answer the question I think you're asking is yes, I also struggle with letting go. It's feelings of guilt because I'm pretty driven. And so my problem is like, okay, I'm in Melbourne right now. And I'm here with my wife, and we've got 7 days of shows. So I'm working in the evening, but our days are our own. So we're out exploring, we're out sightseeing. But I'm struck by tremendous guilt because I am so behind in about a dozen projects. I have Vanishing Inc., a business that I co-run with Andy Gladwin. We have employees that rely on us. I'm relied on for a lot of different projects. And I think to myself, I'm walking around Melbourne taking pictures of graffiti and looking in stores. I should be back in my room doing work. I have so much trouble letting go that it's led to this weird lifestyle quirk where basically I can't relax and do something for myself, like watch a movie, for example, until I've worked for 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 hours. So I tend to only do something for myself between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. And it lets me keep these weird hours that probably aren't healthy. But I can't sit down at 8 p.m. and just watch a TV show because I'm going, what about all those things I have to do? What about all these new things, you know?
And what about, I guess, even more so what I'm trying to get at is that, like, if you look at any situation, you're thinking about how can I involve this in a magic trick rather than just appreciating it for what it is. If you think of comedians, they're looking, everyone they meet, every interaction they encounter, everything they bump into, everything they see can go into their act. Are you able to draw that line and say, maybe this, I don't really want to put this into my show, I just want to appreciate this and just move on?
Of course. I mean, I hope I'm able to draw that line. I can work on a trick for 18 months and test it out, and it might be good, and then I make it a little better, and it might be very good. But at the end of the day, if it's not great, I at some point have to cut it. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of hours I've lost by chasing tricks that are almost good, but not quite.
So do you go back to them and try and make them better? You just leave them?
No, you gotta leave them. You gotta kill your babies.
Right. I get that in radio as well. Things like questions that don't sound so good, and you try and edit them, and it just doesn't sound right, so you have to get rid of them. Now, you're in Melbourne for the first time performing at the Melbourne Magic Festival. You've said you've had time to explore the city, so what have been some of your favourite places you've been in Melbourne?
Oh, this is such a wife question. I don't know their names. Fitzroy area, and all the hipster areas we've loved, like the cool coffee shops, the unique clothing, you know, that sort of thing. I think we're going to go, I've been there before 17 years ago, but we're going to go to the Great Ocean Road and 12 Apostles, so I'm looking forward to it.
So we've got this question, and I've got one more question. Where can people find you?
On Instagram, Joshua J. Magician. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Magician Joshua J. You know, I have a website, and most of all, Vanishing Inc. If you're interested in magic tricks in the magic industry, you can find all of the newest stuff there. Yeah.
And my final question is, as I mentioned before, you did full Penn and Teller back in 2015. I saw that on Netflix, and your act really clicked with me because I've mentioned you are vision impaired. So can you tell me about performing in Vegas with Penn and Teller?
Oh,
tell me a story, Joshua.
Totally surreal. I wish I had some dirty story for you, but no, it's very nice. They go out of their way to make you feel appreciated. You know, I had my family in the audience, and Penn comes out at the top of the show and just goes, well, ladies and gentlemen, you weren't expecting this, but tonight we're just your opening act. That's right. You have a 2-hour opening act because after our show is the main headliner. It's Joshua J. And I mean, he didn't have to say that. That's really incredible. And yeah, they were super nice.
What does Teller sound like? Are you allowed to reveal that?
Yeah.
Have you heard him talk?
Yeah, Teller's a normal guy. He sounds great. He's very articulate. He's a very nice guy. I mean, he's lovely.
Joshua J, thank you so much for coming to Melbourne, doing this for me, and telling me a few stories. And it's been a real pleasure, and I hope you come back soon.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored that you did this. Thanks for following through, and I'm glad we were able to find the time to sit down. Awesome, awesome questions. Wish you nothing but the best.
Hi, Elaine here. I hope you enjoyed my interview with magician Joshua J. If you want to see the trick that inspired me to contact Josh, simply scroll down. Talk to you soon.